All right, peace, family, peace. This your brother Tad of the OG Wisdom Podcast. I want to thank y'all for joining us. Thank you for the little late entry. However, we're waiting for our guest to pull up shortly. We got our brother C-Gutta joining us in a hot minute. Also, our brother Mbwebe Ishangi, author, community activist, and a brother who has done a lot of great works within the community. One of his early books that he wrote is Intergenerational Wealth Planning for Black People. All right. This is a must have in your repertoire. So get that book. We also have some other things that we're going to be working on, but I want to get our brothers in here, uh, pull them up shortly. In fact, give me 1 second. I got one brother trying to come in now. Uh, we got our brother Mbwebe about to pull up shortly backstage, but I definitely want to thank y'all for tuning in. This is the relaunch of the OG Wisdom Podcast. Many people have known, they have caught us in the past, and now we just relaunching. We got a lot of information, a lot of things we want to share with the community, a lot of things we have planned, big things we have planned. So I want to thank y'all for tuning in as we wait for more people to join in. Shout out to my sister Kay Fighter, my sister Keisha Forrester. You can catch us together every Thursday on Thorough Black Talk, where we talk about current events, community events, and politics, things that affect us as a community. All right. So with that going on, in fact, I'm gonna try something real quick. I want y'all to bear with me because I am not a tech person. I am a person who can sit and talk about current events, talk about books that I've read, all that good stuff. So give me 1 second. Give me 1 second while we're in the studio waiting for our folks to pull up. Again, you can follow us on the OG Wisdom Podcast on Instagram, where we talk with our brother C-Gutta. C-Gutta is one of the people from Junior Mafia. He has a lot of connections within the industry in terms of hip hop and R&B. You know, Gutta is a certified OG. Many people know who he is. Many people may not know who he is. And he's very conscious, an African-centered brother who has done his time for mistakes made in the past, but now he's back out free with a whole new mindset. Actually, it's his original mindset, but he has grown and developed into this warrior that we now recognize as Balagoon. Balagoon is his clothing line. Balagoon is also a Yoruba term for a general or war chief. And our brother is a warrior. So shortly, our brother C-Gutta will be joining us. But right now, we have our brother Mbwebe Ishangi. Brother Mbwebe, how you doing, brother?
Salute, General. How are you, man?
Blessed and highly favored, brother. I'm glad you could join us today on
Yeah,
the
man.
OG Wisdom Podcast.
Yes, sir.
You know, how you feeling, bro?
Man, I'm feeling blessed, man. Every day that you have an opportunity to breathe and get up with no pain, physically, and you can, chart your day. That's all a blessing. So I'm giving thanks. Absolute.
Yeah, I want to thank you for joining me. Earlier, before we got online, we were backstage. We was talking about community, leadership, and just the direction we're heading as a community. Let the people know who is Mbwebe Ishangi. I talked about your book a little bit. I gave reference to a pot to piss in, the intergenerational planning for Black people. Talk
Well,
about where you started in this journey on consciousness and educating the people and where you are now.
wow. Okay, so it's got to go way back to the '90s. I would say I was a junior in college at the University of Pittsburgh, and KRS-One came to my school to do a lecture. I thought he was coming to perform, but he actually was the teacher was really going to teach, and I almost didn't go. But that lecture changed my life because at the time I was 21. I was trying to figure out what I want to do with my life in regards to just figuring out, things. And at the time I was um, under the guise of religion, what I'm saying, thinking that was what I was supposed to do and be. And he came and his lecture was called Revolution of the Mind. And that lecture, he just basically the one thing that really stuck with me was because I was an aspiring Bible thumper at the time, that he talked about when you open up the Bible and you look at the first pages, you'll see that it says re-edited version. And he says, so what does that mean? Who has the power to edit the word of God? And he just literally pulled the rug from right under me. And I went back to my dorm and had to do some questioning about my programming. And it was that night that I actually symbolically breaking my bondage or connection to being taught instead of being able to teach myself or be able to question what I'm taught, put my Bible in the trash. And the next morning I went on this journey where I was literally sequestered by several people from different religions, and that got me into the era of Dr. York and 5% Nation, and then finally got home with Marcus Garvey, and learning about being African centered. Your Dr. Benz, Dr. John Henry Clark's, Chancellor Williams, etc. So it's been a journey. Started in 1990, 1991. Learning that, though, my goal was, I've always been a person that loves to share. So I didn't want to keep this to myself. And I realized that, people don't have time to sit there and listen to you talk. So I said, well, I got to do the one thing, the next best thing, and that's write. So I started writing. Regardless of the fact that my college professors told me that I would get Fs, I should never be a writer. I got Fs and Ds in writing in college.
Wow.
but I decided I wanted to speak our story, and started the Ghetto Times magazine in 1993, April 10th. We're in our 31st year. And this has just been a publication now, mainly website based, that is covering the issues that have been chauffeured by global white supremacy, misinformation. And we cover all areas of the 9 areas of people activity, really 10, with economics, labor, economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, sex, religion, and war, and health. And we cover those 10 areas because that is the blueprint that so-called global white dependents, not supremacists, they're depending on us and our ignorance to convey this, to keep this thing going. So that's the genesis of who I am. Evolving, having worked for the National Basketball Association for 12 years, and then having my job taken away from me because of what I post on social media about our story and the reclamation of it. That was when I had the first encounter of understanding I need to learn about money, because that is the crux of everything. We spend our lives working for it, but have the least awareness about it. So that's what prompted me to create the Cryptowoke financial sustainability movement, which prompted me then to write, this book, Apart the Pissin. And in this endeavor is also, I'm also a historian. So I wrote this book also, who is the Boule, which, talks about those vanguards that have been responsible for our delay and our liberation, the ones that went against Garvey. We don't talk about that enough. So that is my whole thing, is understanding that our story must be known, good and bad, and so that we can make assessments about how we can stop making the same mistakes over and over again, because it's 2024. And although we have a robust spending power, we're still 99% consumer, 1% producer. We're still in the same position. We still have the crab in the barrel mentality. And we still are also suffering from post-traumatic slave syndrome. So we are still fighting these things, yet we're still here. We're still here. So the goal is to up that ante so that the next generation has an opportunity to make it better. You know what I'm saying? Like it's supposed to get better, not worse.
Yeah. And I'm glad you took it back to 1991, the level of consciousness you had back then. Now, I know our brother C-Gutta, salute to C-Gutta in the house.
Peace.
Bless up. Bless up.
In the early 90s, 1991, I speak for myself. I was still on Fulton Street, ripping and running, trying to figure it out. Gutta, 1991, what was that like for you back then that led you to this level of consciousness you have now?
1991. I was in prison in 1991.
Okay.
I came home in 91 as well, but yeah, I was it's odd because I was like deep into the streets, and because I was in jail, so I was deep into the street thing, but at the same time, I was also deep into because I had joined the Nation of Gods and Earths in 90. You know what I mean? From just learning, just because my parents, both of my parents were Pan-Africanists. So, and I have an African name, which is Boule. So, you know, just that upbringing just pushed me that, but I was like 10 toes down in the streets. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm learning, you know, I'm learning the history and all of that, but at the same time, I'm with all the negative shit. You understand what I'm saying? So like I was deeply into studying. Because that's one thing about me. I always like to read anyway. Like no matter what we was doing in the streets, I would always pick up something to read. Because that's been my thing since I was young anyway. So I was always reading anyway. So once people pointed me to the books to read instead of just picking up any kind of information, because that's what I was doing before. I was able to take in a lot of information but a lot of it was frivolous. But when I started taking the information that truly mattered for us, then it got deeper. You know what I'm saying? Then I wanted to learn more and more and more. Like you said, the Dr. Benz and the John Henry Clark and I think I started with Chancellor Williams. No, actually I started with brother gave me Message to the Black Man. That's the first. That's the first joint I got, and I was on Rikers Island then. I think I was in OBCC at the time. I was young, you know. Like I said, I was young. I'm into all the negative stuff, so you can imagine, you know, I'm trying to take people commissary. I'm trying to snatch people chains in the hallway, stuff like that. I'm doing, you know, like I said, I was deeply involved in that, you know, and if you're involved in the streets, when you get to jail, you're going to be deeper involved in whatever going on in jail.
Activity.
Yeah, because there's still criminal activity going on in there. But at the same time, like when I had that time not doing that, I was basically playing ball, working out, and reading.
Now,
It wasn't like you doing that shit every day, all day. You know what I'm saying? It's just when the moments present itself, you know, you do whatever you do. You know what I mean? While we was in the buildings.
Now I asked that question, right, Gutta, brother Mbwebe, because here we are, three Black men who truly care about our community. But I think the 90s was a pivotal time for us, like it was for our elders in the 60s. I remember in the 90s, the elders would always talk about the 60s because we had Dr. Clark, we had Dr. Ben, Professor Browders, we had these master teachers, Kaba Kamene. You know, we have them right now in our midst. But I can remember hearing elders back in the 90s talk about walking with Malcolm, talking about marching with Dr. King and how important that was to them. So I'm be honest with you, I was kind of jealous of the 60s back in the 90s. But then as hindsight is always 2020.
I was jealous and like for some idiotic reason is kind of dismissive of certain, because I didn't realize, like, you don't realize the danger they was in. Right. And I was like, yo, y'all wasn't busting their head, blah, 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 and you don't understand the context it was in. It's like, nah, it ain't like it is in my era. Like the young dudes look at us, be like, man, y'all would. I was like, homie, you don't understand. It's like certain things happen in my era that y'all can't do.
Right. And Gutta, that's where I was going. That's why I brought the 90s up, because I want to bring this up to where we are now and how we move forward in the future before we sign out with this, right? So the whole thing, I was bringing up that level of consciousness because in the 90s, we didn't, 1990, 1991, we didn't realize the value of the 90s of what we had, because there was a huge paradigm shift when we look back in the 90s, because in the 60s, you just had an awakeness of just not taking it. It was more so about laws, a little bit about culture, but more about laws. But in the 90s, we realized the value in change, not just changing laws, but creating a whole new reality by embracing our own African culture. So even within the music, even within television, you had the creation of Moshood. Remember Fulton Street, downtown Brooklyn. Remember, you had Bogle from Seven Corners almost down to Flatbush Extension, where it was all black businesses.
Yeah, that was,
our,
and then when you go past Franklin Avenue,
right?
remember when you go past Franklin Avenue,
right? Bedford Avenue. You had the Muslims at the mosque,
yeah.
Bedford and Fulton. Shout out to the brothers over there.
Yeah.
So there was a whole new level of consciousness arising in the 90s. But just like you, Gutta, you know, we were in the streets. Gutta's a few years older than me, so he was in the street grade above me. You know, I was with the group coming up behind Gutta. You know what I'm saying? So he was an OG in the streets in my class. But there was a consciousness shift that was going on that we didn't realize the value that was happening at the time. But the 90s gave us some dope teachers. It really opened our eyes to the Dr. Khalid Muhammad's, to the Barishangus, who we got so familiar with, who gave us African people and European holidays. Dr. Clark was still alive. We still had Dr. Ben in our midst. We had the United African Movement down on Fulton and Bedford at the Slave Theater, bringing in all the heavy hitters. Now, this is the 90s. We still had Kwame Ture. All of these people in our midst at the time. Unfortunately, some of us were still looking back at the 60s, but the 90s was a very, very pivotal point that brought us to where we are today.
And a lot of us miss, especially like individuals like me, miss opportunities.
Yes.
To be in a miss, to like move away from what we was doing quicker than we ended up doing.
Yes.
It was a lot of dudes that was in the streets that was conscious. Yeah. I know it's an oxymoron, but it's that was just it. We were conscious to a degree. We just knew who we were. We were proud of that. We knew our history to a degree, but we didn't understand the full
magnitude,
the full magnitude of everything.
Who we are and what's
like we didn't understand what we was doing was well, we knew it was negative because we knew more through the law, through knowing like if we get caught, this is what we, you know what I'm saying? But we wasn't understanding
quality of life policies.
Yeah, we wasn't understanding the impact it was having on our community as a whole.
Right. And now what's fun, because real quick, Gutta, because I want to give it back to Mbwebe to bring him up, because I definitely want to talk about you being in the streets. I'm gonna give it to Mbwebe, but this point I want to make, Gutta, because I want you to jump in this after Mbwebe. Because in the 90s, you, along with me, was seeing the development of one of the greatest hip hop artists ever alive, arguably the best that ever did it. Back in the 90s, our brother wasn't big yet. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody knew who he was yet. Because we're still trying to figure it out in the 90s. Our brother was in school.
I mean, remember I came home the end of 91. So I was home from November to March because I went right back to jail like I asked.
Yeah. So, brother Mbwebe, while you was in school fighting the misinformation about who we are as African people in the United States, what was that climate like, fighting this ignorance in school of white folks, and then at the same time looking at the ignorance of what's going on in our communities with the drug epidemic going on and the intentional misinformation in the early 90s about who we were, because that's when we also saw gangster rap really take a hold on our folks. And you were in school with educated kids who all of a sudden became gangster. Right. What was your process back then?
You know, the thing that really used to I gotta realize that they say from boys to men, you know what I mean? It's like even in coming into self-awareness about yourself, it was done in such a rebellious way because you realize, damn, I've been lied to. So everything is, you know, you're mad at everything, you know what I mean? And so, but at the same time, not understanding the full spectrum of it, because we're thinking we personalize it. Like, okay, this is happening in my life, not realizing, yo, this is not 500 years, this is 6,000 years of colonialism. You know what I'm saying? So we don't understand the magnitude of how deeply rooted this thing is. So we go in thinking, I got the solution, because that was my mindset. Like, maybe y'all ain't never read this before me, and when you read it, you gonna be like, yo, just you gonna feel like how I feel. Like, yo, I'm done with this, and I'm gonna go ahead and go on this plane. Um, Not realizing that, and I say this a lot now, the Harriet Tubman complex is part of our DNA. And what I mean by that is, Harriet Tubman said that she would have saved thousands more, if not hundreds, if not thousands more of slaves, if they knew that they were slaves. So me trying to learn as I'm going, learn and share as I'm going, because I'm like, I'm getting it and I'm giving it. I'm getting it and I'm giving it, because I'm like, yo, this is so, to me, it was like an epiphany of awareness. And I was like, I can reclaim myself for the first time. I can stand on my own, knowing who I am and knowing that I'm in a space where the world sees me in a different kind of way. And I need to make my people be aware of that. You know what I'm saying? We all know there's a hint of something isn't right, but now I can tell you specifically why things are messed up and who's behind it. I can name the names, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, when you're doing that, you start to realize that it's not on the higher echelon of a lot of people. They're not interested. I've had people tell me, I've even said it before, I'm not interested in that black shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't, because they're trying to get theirs, they're trying to establish themselves or whatever. And so that was the uphill battle of understanding that global white dependency did a great job at creating examples of what happens if you try to stand up for yourself. I mean, they imprison folks. You know what I'm saying? They dismantle, they infiltrate. So we have that distrust amongst each other. Then we're also still fighting each other because we want to be black, we want to be Negro, we want to be nigger, we want to be African. Now we want to be Moors, we want to be all these things fighting each other, opposed to the fact that, look,
aliens.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? Right. Like, who's
Nazis,
responsible for creating all of this? Who's responsible for creating all this nonsense? You know what I'm saying? Like, even today, like, people are still beefing about, if you say black, well, okay, I understand black is not a place. I know that, but you're trying to speak to the masses. If I say African, you be like, no, I ain't African.
Exactly.
You know, so I gotta say, oh, I ain't black. Okay, if I say brown, no, I'm not Latino. So, you know what I mean? We try to figure out what do you want to be identified as?
You're gonna offend somebody.
Exactly.
However you say it. If you say it black, if you say you black, the Hebrews and the Moors are gonna get mad.
Bomb.
You say you African, they gonna get mad again.
Bomb.
The indigenous Americans, which I don't understand, because there's only one place people were ever indigenous to. That's Africa.
And even that,
else we travel
I tell folks, regardless, if you say we were here before slavery, I agree with that. However, when you go back to if you want to go back to the very first people, the oldest bones, when you talk about Pangea, when you talk about, people are so afraid to talk about the top. And this is what Asa Hilliard always says: when you study history, study it in its chronological order. Give me the damn dates. If you can't give me dates, and if you throw the Bible at me, that's what KRS once said, is that Genesis in the beginning, that's not a date. In the beginning is not a freaking date. So you can't put that on a timeline to see what else is going on. More importantly, where were African people at that space at that time? 2024 AD, meaning 2024 years ago, 0 AD, we were already doing shit. So the point is that there's so much dissension, and that's what creates folks not wanting to take responsibility of, okay, where's my stance? Where do I see myself? What is the pivot, or what is the square I stand on? Because there's so much disinformation, because we've been misinformed. We're still suffering from that. You know what I'm saying? So it's not to say that we can't get rid of that, but we've been toxified. So we need to detox that. And in doing that, it takes time, bro. And I have to understand that for myself, is that in the earlier years, I thought, man, I had the solution. I thought I knew it. And not follow me, but read what I read and you'll be there. And even our authors weren't there. That's the reality. Because this is not a generational problem. Therefore, it's not a generational solution. This is multi-generational. You're talking about playing chess, not checkers.
Everybody got
We're
to get.
thinking, yeah, and we're thinking we can solve this in one generation. Nah, man, that's not the way it works. You know, if you're looking at the bigger spectrum of it all, it's a much bigger and deeper plan. So therefore, you need to start thinking bigger. You need to start thinking intergenerationally. How can I pass this information to the next generation? That's where we need to be at. That's just my mindset about it.
So, Gutta, what was your mindset? Like, all right, early 90s, you're in prison, you're reading these books, you come home, because I know you was back and forth, but for our audience who may not know how often you were back and forth, what was the transition like for you coming out from prison? One of your best friends is now got a record deal. He's about to blow up. We've been knew B.I.G. was nice. We've been knew Biggie was nice. You know this stuff, but now here's the contradiction, because the whole hood is on some street type of time. You was in prison, you're reading, you'll understand that this is a plan designed by our open ops. But here it is. This whole thing is about to feed you, your family, the crew, and at the same time, you're growing into the lessons your parents instilled in you. How was that for you?
I still was fully embracing negativity at the time. Like,
Though you knew better.
yeah. Like I was literally what the gods would call the devil. Because the devil know what he doing. I was on bullshit. Tad, you know, like,
yeah, look, it's just story to tell.
And all I could do is be honest. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I knew better. I would even talk to the young homies and all that, and like, yo, you know where we from, this, that, and the third. But because I also was dealing with a temper problem too, as well. My temper was like
real quick, Gutta, because we're talking about street stuff, but I want to know, what was your hustle of choice in the streets?
My hustle of choice.
How did you get your money?
Like I did a little bit of everything, but mostly stick ups. Like I would get money off of stick ups.
So you would tell the young dudes,
I would book something and then hustle. You know what I mean?
So let me ask you, Gutta, you would give young dudes knowledge, but then just turn around, spin the block, and stick something up.
Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to put that on the table.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. Like I would be, you know, because I was big on history. And I was big on because like that was one of my favorite subjects in school. I read a lot anyway. So you know, I was big on that. So with that in mind, like if one of the little homies bring up something, or one of the homies, period, it ain't have to be a little homie. It was a homie that was around my age. If he brought up something in that arena, then I start going in. But I didn't really tell you, like another thing, Tad, did you know that people I ain't really talk much outside of that.
At all.
You know what I'm saying? I ain't really do a lot of talking outside of that. Outside of cracking jokes on people, you know what I'm saying? Or we having a deep conversation. You know what I'm saying? I could talk about, I would have a conversation about sports, which I was the only dude that was in the sports in my crew like that. Big wasn't in the sports, not playing. Like he watched it, but he didn't play. He played ball when I went to the park, and he'll come in there and we'll be in there late night playing, bullshitting around. But he wasn't in the sports. Rock wasn't really in the sports. Cheek wasn't. Cheek was the only other one that played ball, but not to the degree that I did. So we didn't have those conversations. You know what I'm saying? I would put Big up on certain people like, yo, nah, he nice. Because Big asked me, but we didn't have basketball conversations. You dig what I'm saying? We didn't have football conversations or anything like that.
But everything was just about the streets and because I'm be honest with you, brother and baby. As long as I knew Gutta used to be real quiet. I mean, he still is like that. You know, he talked when he comfortable, but he was this old school Brooklyn we talking about. So his eyes was moving, you could see his brain thinking, and he was definitely silent. But I'm bringing this up, right, just to give a background, a context of who we are as Black men on this panel talking about problems. And as we close out, we definitely going to talk about solutions. But in leadership, brother and boy, you wrote a book about the Boule. A lot of people like to throw that word around right now. First time I heard about first time I heard that word was by our ancestor Steve Coakley, right? Peace be upon him. Tell the people who the Boule are and how they function. And are they good or bad for the community?
So when you do the definition, you look up the definition of Boule, it's defined as advisors to the king. Now, you then need to look up the word advisor, because some people think, oh, you give advice to the king. No, there's another advisor definition, means you take instruction from the king, which is what this advisor means. And so the Boule is the oldest Black organization in America. And it was founded before, although it's a fraternity, it predates, outside of Prince Hall Masons, it predates, your NAACPs, Urban Leagues, Jack and Jill's, all those. And in fact, those are subsidiaries of the Boule. That's their recruiting cesspool that they pull from, right? So we have fraternities, sororities, etc. But the Boule comprises of, as ancestor Steve Coakley in 1990 came out and really, guns blazing about this information about the spook against us. You know what I'm saying? Like the blackface that infiltrated our greatest organizations, be it the Black Panther movement, be it the Marcus Garvey UNIA movement. This is the movement of men comprised of 3,000 of the most established men in America and abroad. There are some in the Caribbean as well. Chapters is that these men the originators of the Boule was founded by 6 doctors out of Philadelphia, May 15, 1904 is when they were incorporated. And these men basically wanted to resurrect the second chapter, their tenets or their practices of Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones, if you're not familiar with who Skull and Bones is the second chapter of the Illuminati, the first chapter being Phi Beta Kappa, who was outed in 1776. And they went underground and resurfaced in 1832 at Yale University as Skull and Bones. So when you talk about Skull and Bones, now we got to look into the names. You got to look at your Lord Nathan Rothschild. You got to look at Cecil Rhodes. You got to look at John D. Rockefeller, who is not a born man, but a made man. We're looking at these elite international bankers who are responsible for global white dependency. And now you got these Negroes that want to come and resurrect this chapter, meaning that we want to be the ones that get the table scraps, and we'll keep the Negroes in line for you. So when we look at that history, we find that the Boule is responsible for the Tuskegee experiment. The doctors that injected the syphilis were members of the Boule under the direction of R.R. Moulton. Once they got rid of, or I would say even probably killed, Booker T. Washington. And Tuskegee was the first and really only HSBC, because all the other ones are named after white supremacists, white slaveholders, etc. These are institutions of higher training, they say learning, but it's really higher training. And so we found that our entire, and the reason why, let me just say this too, the reason why the Boule was founded was because you have to think about this, is that we were emancipated in 1865, right? So we're emancipated, but now so that means we're free to go and learn. And, the last thing you want to do is to have Negroes read, because if they read, then they can start to learn the language, and then they can actually see themselves as more than just domestic. They can see themselves as, around the entire globe. So they had to harness the type of information we have access to. So that's why they created these HSBCs, these institutions that allegedly are Black ran or owned, and they're not. But it's the experience of being Black, right? But Spelman is named after John D. Rockefeller's wife. People don't even know that Spelman is John D. Rockefeller's wife, not this Black woman named Spelman. So these institutions are important because this is where this new generation that is now no longer in physical bondage now can learn and read, but we want to harness and make sure what they are exposed to. And we do not want them to think about Africa in a good light. So that's why we have the Boule in place to make us want to stay domestic. You have W.B. Du Bois, who was against Garvey, was against Booker T. Washington. And although they only talk about the latter years, the last 3 years of W.B. Du Bois, because he became a so-called Pan-Africanist, moving over to Ghana and dying there because he wanted to work on the Encyclopedia Africana, he was still an agent. He never gave up who he worked for. He never gave up the names, because that's under their pledge. They're not supposed to tell you in their logo. It's a lion with their hand over a vase. Inside the vase are the names of those who run the world. And they promised to never tell those people. So did Carter G. Woodson, same thing, who wrote Miseducation of the Negro. Although he put it in code, they never told you the name. So if someone killed your moms and I just kept telling you they killed your mom, you're like, who's they? Give me the exact name. That's what they did. They gave us, breadcrumbs of who it possibly can be. Purposely designed for us to never catch who it is. So we got to think about where we are in 2024 and why we're still in the same situation socioeconomically, culturally. We still are the entertainers of the world, but none of the owners of the world. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that the Boule is responsible for us investing in their education, opposed to becoming African-centered and knowing who you are globally. That's in the summation of it. It's a whole bunch of other things that we could look into, and I've covered in the book as well. But our history, our story has been dripped to us with a lot of white sugar, white flour, and white folk. We just hadn't even understand that.
It's funny you say that. I've been to Ghana and I've been to W.B. Du Bois gravesite. In fact, it's the W.B. Du Bois Center of African American Studies and things like that. I'm glad you brought that up, because even when here in DC, when you go to the Smithsonian Museum as well, when you start, because you're supposed to start from the basement and move up. I came from Africa. A couple of months later, I was in the museum and I'm just looking at this distorted history, because in the museum, a lot of props were given to the Europeans for being quote unquote abolitionists and things of that nature, and everything was sports and entertainment, not too much of who our freedom fighters was. I think they had Nat Turner's Bible, Harriet Tubman's gun, our little brother got murdered in Money, Mississippi. I mean,
Emmett Till,
right?
Yeah,
they had his casket. A little fluffy, because we understand our story. It's a lot different than what we see in the Great Blacks and Wax Museum down in the basement. If you ever go there, you'll get a full story. How do we identify who is the Boule? Because a lot of our folks are following these leaders who haven't been tried or true, but somehow they get a microphone and a camera on them, and people think that these are our spokesperson. How do we identify?
You made a good point earlier about everyone's throwing that word out there, right? Because they're saying LeBron James is Boule. First of all, there's prerequisites to be in the Boule. First of all, you have to be at least 45 years old. You have to already have been accomplished. Okay, see, they're not recruiting people with potential. You have to already have been accomplished, and you must be a doctor, lawyer, politician, etc. You must be part of the divine. Well, not Divine Nine, because that's including the sororities, but you must be the part of the Divine Four, the fraternities: Alpha Phi Alpha, Omega Psi Phi, Phi Beta Sigma, Kappa Alpha Psi, and maybe Iota Phi Theta. But you need to be part of a fraternity first. Okay, and so those are the prerequisites to be in the Boule. Now, that's not to say that you have, just like in Masonry, people don't understand is that in Masonry, you have 33 to 3rd degrees. However, the first 1 through 3rd degree, you're thinking that you're at the highest echelon. Right. And is it until the 30th degree that you realize that those 30 previous 29 degrees you've been lied to?
Wow.
By then you've been indoctrinated. So you've been indoctrinated so much that by the 33rd degree, they tell you who your mother and father is. And it's the African man and woman.
Yes.
And so now you have to pledge to keep that silent. However, if you ever meet anybody that knows that and they confront you with it, you have to acknowledge it.
Now, it's funny you bring that up about who your parents are, because when we talk about the Masons, we're not talking about just Black people alone. We're talking about anybody that's part of
Scottish and York.
because I want to peel back a couple of layers because fraternities, a lot of times our folks join fraternities and say, well, this is from ancient Africa, this is from ancient Egypt, this is our stuff, you know, and that's a whole nother subject in itself.
Yeah.
But when you say they let you know who your mother and father is, on your website, the Ghetto Times, in one of the expo days you did over 10 years ago, you talked about statues and images and how things are hidden in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
On the Library of Congress, they tell the story, correct? And one thing that I share with my young people, which I thought was so dope, was that outside of the U.S. Customs Office, the Native American Museum down in Wall Street, you shown what they call it, the four
women.
Yeah,
four women.
The statues. They put that imagery right there in our face. They're already telling us, but I guess you mean once you get to a certain level in Freemasonry, they're pretty much more blatant. But to the layman such as myself, Gutta, our audience, those who haven't done this research, talk about some of the images that are in plain sight, but speaks loudly about who they are and who we are in relationship to our existence on this planet.
Man, that's one of my favorite topics because as they say, the easiest way to hide something from a Black person is to either put it in the book or right in your face, right in front of your nose. And so because we are not, so this is what prompted me to also get into STEAM or STEM, because I have a program that's called From Slave Ships to Steamships. And I teach about how most of us think we're just brought here, those of us that were brought here, because for those folks, they would get mad. I was, that conversation. But the point is that they brought us over here not just for free labor. They brought us over here for our innovation. They knew that we created cities, built from the ground up. We had underwater sewage, we had electricity. We knew about, alchemy. We knew about botany. We knew about those areas. So that's why they valued us, right? And then they made us forget, as my Jegna Browder talks about Transition 13. They made us forget, and then we forgot that we created these things. And then they reteach us this from the white perspective that Thomas Edison created energy or electricity, when we know that it was Lewis Latimer that was really behind it. And they called him the Black Con Ed, when they actually, or the Black Edison, when it actually should be, Edison should be called the Black Latimer. You know what I'm saying? And interesting enough, the energy company is called Con Edison because it's a con. But the point is that when you look at structure, when you look at, it's all around us. When you look at pillars, when you mentioned the ethnological head to the Library of Congress, the ethnological heads talks about the origin of race. And, there's 33 heads, 33 masonry. And there's 33 heads surrounding the entire upper echelon of that building. And when you go around there, the front of the building are all the European, different ethnicities of Europeans, right?
Facing which direction?
Facing west, right? So most people get mad because, that's the front of the building. Oh yeah, they will put white people first, right? The ethnological origin of Africans are in the back,
facing
right. Facing, that's the point, facing east. So we're thinking that, oh man, they put us in the back like the back of the bus with Rosa Parks, right? When actuality, it is correct because the sun rises in the east. The origin of man, the origin of woman, the origin of knowledge comes from the east, not from the west. So they are not, they're being precise in saying these things. It's just that we are not aware of mathematics, or let's just say it's science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics. We don't know that STEAM is actually should be African, because that's what it is. They're taking all that from Africa. We were the ones that did all of the, John Lafayette is the one that was able to do the layout of DC because he studied the star. I'm sorry, not Lafayette. Well, Lafayette is the one that's given credit for
it, but it was Banneker.
It was Benjamin Banneker.
Yeah.
The almanac, the wooden clock and whatnot. He's the one that looked in the stars because he was from Dogon. He had Dogon in his blood, even though they were like generations apart. So how was that? That was the innovation in his DNA. So I speak about that and I get excited about it because guess what? That gene is still in us. If you tap into it, you will open up and reignite that genius in us. But because we're told, no, you're supposed to be part of the rat race, you're supposed to get a job, you're not a man unless you have a job. Supposed to work for someone and wait for them to pay you. And when they let you go, guess what? Go find another plantation. You spend your entire 50 some odd years working for someone and you got 8 years to retire. That's supposed to be living, because that money has gotten in the way. We don't understand our true purpose. We were not born to live to work. We weren't born to pay rent. We're the only species on this planet that has to pay to live on this planet. That has gotten in the way of who we are as in our genius, my true purpose. What is the dash between my birth date and my expiration date? What is that dash filled with? It's been filled with servitude and misinformation and working for somebody thinking that's my value, my monetary value. So because of that, we aren't aware of what our true identity is. We're going after the wrong thing. It's what they say, you can work for 40 years thinking you're gonna get rich. You're gonna still be broke. You're gonna be, if not more broke in 40 years than you were when you started out, because you're chasing a dollar and you don't know how to manage it. So that's why I got into finances, because I'm like, look, let's deal with the finances, because then when you own your time, then you can go back to your greatness of my purpose. What was I really put here for? Let me study that history. Let me go out and walk my streets and look at the names. I was talking about this the other day. Let's look at the names of our streets, the cities, the buildings, the holidays. These are named most likely after someone that has done something wrong against African people. So when you call their names, you are giving them homage. You are paying homage. You are resurrecting the energy of their deeds. We need to be getting to the renaming. And okay, I can't change Peter Stuyvesant, because they're trying to call it what, Stuyvesant Heights, right? I can't change the history of Stuyvesant, right, or call it Bed-Stuy. But if I do mention it, I'm going to turn around and also mention Sheikh Anta Diop or Diop. I'm going to mention Chancellor Williams. I'm going to mention Francis Cress Welsing. I'm going to, on a daily basis, mention an ancestor's name, be it in my tribe or even in my immediate bloodline, to balance out, if not get ahead of that negative energy I just misappropriately gave when I said, oh, I'm going to Washington, D.C., and, I'm giving Washington homage in his name. I know that's, semantics or whatever. This little extra, but energy, words, sound, power is good.
To your point.
Yeah, words, sound, power.
And it's definitely now we get into the higher level conversations dealing with frequency and consciousness and vibration. One thing I've learned years ago, there's only one sense. We were taught that there's 5 senses, some say 6. I say there's one sense, and that's the sense of touch. Light have to touch your retinas to process it. Vibrations have to touch your eardrums to decipher the sounds. It's only one sense. These are just frequencies that our 2 eyes can't see. But like our brother Black Dot, he always called it the first eye. He don't call it the third eye. He called the mind's eye the first eye. In fact, I love that article you did called Time, the inner mind's eye.
Yes.
It's old, but it's phenomenal. And I think a lot of people should get on that. I bring these things up, right, because we have higher level conversations. Gutta, when he go in, I just be like, I just sit back and learn from Gutta, because he's very astute with history, right? But I like to break things down for the layman, for the people in the streets who where Gutta and myself once were, who wants to bring up their consciousness. Because real quick, we're in the information age and everybody wants things instantly, microwavable. We went from history to our relationship and our identity to finances. How do we make it relatable for our folks to have the proper identity, to develop their finances, and as you said, free up your time so you could truly find your purpose?
Man, I tell you that the crux of it all, man, I tell you, is, and as Gutta says, like history. See, I don't just get into, oh, let me help you with your credit. Let me help you get with these, you might cause some disputes. No, we go into the history of money. First of all, we were the first currency, number one. I mean, we look at Wall Street. We understand that the currency first was the exchange of African people as currency. But when you talk about the history of money, and you talk about Jekyll Island, 1930, when the Federal Reserve note was created, the Federal Reserve, which then took away the gold from the civilians, and they could do this again as well. But when the international bankers came on the scene and bought America, and we understand that, okay, even all this presidency shit is bullshit. Trump, Biden, even your local government. Why? Because let's look at this. Is there any solutions being brought? Everybody talking about it when it come election time, but is there ever solutions brought? Absolutely not. It's a delay. And it actually makes it's for the layman to think that they contributed. Oh, I voted. And yeah, I'm gonna tell you, I don't vote. But anyone that votes, they feel like I did my part. I put in the person. Well, how can you really feel like you did your part when they told you who you could choose? You know what I'm saying? And they're only giving you two choices. You know what I'm saying? So the point is that the onus is on the individual. And I'm not saying don't participate in if that's your thing, cool, but that needs to be more than politics, because we've seen it does not deliver, has not delivered. And African people in America are the only ones every 25 years that has to have the bill passed again for us to allow us to even vote. People don't know about that. You know what I'm saying? And they're not beefing about that. So we talk about how great Obama was, but he didn't abolish that bill. Right. But the point I'm making is that we don't understand that the biggest part of I don't want to get away from your question, but history is the crux. When you talk about history, then you look at money in a totally different way. Because there are people, and I'm not a Trump follower at all, but when he said at the last, when he was debating last when he was running for the first term, 2000, whatever, when he ran against Hillary.
We ran before.
Yeah. So he said that when they said, "Oh, you don't pay taxes," he said, "Because I'm smart." And he said, "Look, if you don't want me to pay taxes, change the law." Did they change the law? Did they change the law?
He said they wouldn't.
Right. So that's my point. But guess what? 99.9% of the people just said, he's wicked. No, what you should have said was, you know what? Okay, what's the law? Let me understand, what is the law? What are the value of trust? What can trust do that because there's a point where we don't even understand it. We have choices. And when you there's a choice to not make a choice, which a lot of us do. We don't know that we have choices, so you're choosing to not make a choice. Therefore, you fall under the title of being a warden of the government. So we've been trying to understand that the whole layout of the land needs to be understood, that we have been lied to. But in addition to that, you can actually use their laws against them legally and live the type of life that you're looking for. And then most importantly, look at yourself getting out of this country and seeing yourself as a global African. We ain't got to just do it here.
Hold on. Do you still got your project outside the country?
100%. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, I want to give the mic to Gutta real quick because as you was going, you sounded like Gutta just now because Gutta don't rock with no politicians. Gutta, everything you said, I'm just like, all right, Gutta got to jump in on this one.
Yes, all right.
I've heard that from Gutta.
I ain't gonna lie, I hate both sides.
Yeah.
Right, literally. Because we invest so much, and when you think about it, we are the swing votes for either side. Yeah. So both of them panded to us to fuck us around. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I can't stand politicians.
Yeah, because like I said, you done said everything Gutta would say. Because everything you said,
bro, because it's none of them. They all working for a corporation.
Yeah.
Look, I give you a perfect example. Look at what's happening in Palestine and Israel. Well, which is Palestine. I ain't even gonna say it's Israel because they took people land. But just look at that. Anybody that spoke out about it, that the lobby spent millions of dollars to back anybody that go against them. Mm-hmm. So that tell you who's in control of everything. It's corporations, bro. Mm-hmm. They control everything. So you voting for a corporation.
And their hands are at the main source of resources. Like I just learned that Israel, their number one export or the number one what is it? Gross national GNP, but it ain't something they produce. It's diamonds. but there are no diamond mines in Israel. So where are the diamond mines? They're in Africa.
Yeah.
So all of this is about ownership of resources, land and resources. And now we see that, Asians are moving into Africa. I mean, this could be this is a global conversation. It isn't just what's happening here in America. And that's the
Yeah,
problem.
no.
Is
Yeah.
we're focused on America and not realizing that, this is something, because I always, and I'll digress, is that America is the only place that has military bases in other countries. Are there any military bases on American soil from another country?
Hell no.
No.
Sadate.
I like that. Sadate. So, dealing with leadership and moving forward, do you think there's a crisis in our leadership in our community? Yes and no. And how do we move forward with whatever your answer is?
Me or Gutta?
You, brother.
Okay. Until we appoint our own leadership, there is no leadership.
Right.
The leaders that we have are ones they give us. And I think the onus is on us, because it's easier to say, well, when they give us what we want, well, what do you want? Like, didn't the Black Panthers have a list of what they need and their needs and wants?
10-point program.
Yeah, exactly. So that needs to be resurrected. That, okay, what is it that we're looking for? Because I look at it like this. I equate our leadership should be just like how sports leagues are, right? Back in the 70s, you were a coach, you coached your entire life. Chuck Noll was a coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers for 25, 30 years, whether they won or not. Nowadays, if you have a winning, you could be hired. This happened in the Milwaukee Bucks, and not that I'm a sports fan, I used to be, but the Milwaukee Bucks fired their coach, a quarter into the season, and then they replaced them. You know what I'm saying? So the point is that they want you to win now. So we need to have that same mentality of, where are the victories? Jesse, we ain't heard from Jesse in a long time because I know he's sick, and he's old. But all of, our Al Sharptons, all of those guys have moved on. So whoever is the so-called next batch of leaders that we're supposed to have, that's supposed to be in blackface for us, we need to be holding them under a microscope. Where are the victories? And more importantly, we need to be figuring out, what is it that we want? What are our demands?
So, because and that's good for the audience, the Jessies, the Isles, the Crumps, because we know better. So as we spoke about the Boules. So excluding them in the African-centered community, what does leadership look like? Me, myself, I'm kind of critical of leadership, not all leadership. However, I do see there's a crisis within our African-centered movement. There's a crisis in leadership there. How do we identify the good ones from the bad ones? And why is it that our leaders don't come together anymore within the African-centered community if we all say we share the same ideology and have the same goal?
I think we need to stop looking at history as a money grab or as a hustle. A lot of folks that are doing, either be it writing books, doing lectures, whatever, they're that's how they earn their living, right? I think the issue is that we should move away from seeing the disbursement and sharing of our story as a job or as a way to earn income, because there's money behind it. Then we're competitive with each other, which means I don't want to work with this person because he could compete. He could, take away some of my likes, follows, whatever opportunities. So that's again where finances comes in because we're under the mindset that in order to create wealth or to create even sustainability, it has to be given to you from someone else. Meaning, if it's not a boss, then it's going to be me trying to pack a room full of an audience to come and listen to me speak, and they're paying me $20 a head. That's how I'm going to earn my living. Well, the actual way of earning living by those that understand it is that you employ your money to work for you. When you are able to put in a system that employs your money, meaning passive income coming in, meaning you're being paid on a whatever particular basis, be it weekly, daily, whatever, that you can now do this work out of your passion and not out of competition. So I think the biggest problem for us, even with our elders, and I've said this a long time ago, is, I saw the examples of Dr. Clark, even, recently Dr. Ben, who had to take all his works and was given to the Nation of Islam, which I think, there's a lot of suppression of his works there. But the point is that we have been under the mindset that, we've been under the practice of not creating outside wealth out of what we're doing. So if I do a gig and I get 10 G's from it, I should be putting that into something that is going to now work for me, so that maybe I won't have to keep doing talks to get people to pay me $20 to listen to me talk for 3 hours. Maybe now I can take those funds and put it towards, a garden project, or housing development project, or something that is going to be philanthropic to employ ourselves in a space where we're now doing for ourselves. But again, if money is the motive, then everyone's a competitor. You're looking at everybody's competition. So that's why even in the African-centered space, some of our elders don't get along with each other because they hating on each other on the low. That's, I want to say is natural, but maybe it's natural with the mind if you have a Western mindset. And so I'm not saying none of us are purely cleansed of that. You know what I'm saying? But if this is the way you eat, then you're going to be defensive.
Yeah.
You're not going to have anything else set in place. So that's where we need to start thinking about, well, finances to me is so critical for every living being on this planet, because you need to get away from the mindset of thinking that someone has to give you something in exchange for time for you to sustain yourself. The rich don't live, Warren Buffett don't live that way. And if we just do a little bit of, they have a saying, if you're not learning about finances 5 hours a week, you're being irresponsible.
Wow. So aside from folks reading your book, what are some other books you suggest, or people you think they should get more information from? And I want you to talk about your crypto space as well.
Yeah, you mean in realms of finances, or in culture?
Yeah, in reference to finances, particularly Black authors, Black economists.
Yeah, Julian Gordon, man. That's brother, man. I love that brother. His works. He's a great brother. He's got what is it called? Rituals. He has a book. He does real estate, but he has a wealth of information in finances. And I've read the works of Robert Nelson. Obviously, we can say Claude Anderson has written books about and talks about. There's George Fraser. He talks about finances and the importance of it from a culture. He's an African-centered brother. So there are those out there. There's not as many as I would like to find. And then some of those that I have come across, there's a hustle behind it. So I'm kind of like, you know what I'm saying? But like, for me, my goal is to try to fill in what I'm wanting.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? What I'm not seeing. And what I'm not seeing enough is people lining up the history with the finances. Because to me, once you get the history, that's the foundation. Now you're motivated. So when you do come into a bag, you don't forget why you're doing what you're doing. A lot of people, you can help them bring them out of debt, raise their credit score. They get more credit. What do? They go buy more shit, and they end up right back where they were. But if you entitle them with the information about how this is set up to fail, and you teach them things like velocity banking strategies and infinite banking concepts, then you understand, wait a minute, this is going to live beyond me. Like, how can I use permanent life insurance to create wealth beyond myself, and I can loan from it and not get taxed on it? Like, how does that work? When we start to understand that component, then we're operating from a perspective of intergenerational wealth planning, where now my youth and their youth and 70 years into the future are set up in a way where they can say, they don't have to ever work on a corporate plantation. And my goal is for everyone that does work for someone is to get you to fire your boss before they fire you. And we need to do that because jobs are going to become more scarce because of the artificial intelligence complex on the industry we're entering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got anything you want to add on? Because I don't want to keep our brother too much longer.
I'm just soaking all this up. Like, yeah, I got a sponge all that.
Madase.
So let me ask the audience. Audience, do y'all have any questions? If you do, you can type it in your chat real quick so we can have our brother and Boy clear up anything that you may be confused about. Any questions about history, politics, not necessarily politics, but finance and organizations, and just how you can follow him. Any questions from anybody in the audience? This book has been very helpful and instrumental to me, my brother and Boybe. I truly appreciate it. Things are simple, and I love that you wrote it. Like you said, you filled in the gap for what you felt was missing. You're looking for, you decided to make plain what you're looking for. I think financing and all this other stuff is so important. And I think right now with the influx of migrants and our folks still looking at hand to mouth as a terms of building wealth, getting money, our whole identity and psychology of money definitely has to change. So I think it's important. Our sister K Fighter said, which is the best route, a trust or a will?
A trust. So
A
you
trust.
you don't want to own anything, but control everything.
Okay. And a trust will do that.
A trust gives you, it's the jurisdiction that is impenetrable by any judicial system, because it allows you as an individual to become a living being opposed to being a human being. And if you look up the word human being or human, it actually means, in the Black Laws Dictionary, it means sea monster.
Yes.
And one who is not allowed to own anything. So we call us, and that's the problem, is that we have not been taught how to understand the language, because there's English and then there's what's called legalese, and legalese is a legal language.
And our sister K Fighter is an expert in legalese. I really get a lot of information from my sister. Plus my little stints passing in and out of their injustice system. I was one of those folks who spent my time in the law library because I am a reader. I love to read. I love to learn. And I always say, if the knowledge you have don't solve your problems, then you don't know anything. A lot of times we just like to read to say we read a book, but then we don't implement it.
Comprehension.
I've seen tons of elders talk about, just all the teachers and all the lessons that are in the books. However, they don't live with it. And I'm like, all right, let's not be that contradiction, Baba or Mama. You say, let's follow Dr. Sabi. You say, let's follow Dr. Africa, but then you cooking up like this and this. Now, I like fried chicken like the next person. That's me personally. But you won't hear me running around citing Dr. Sabi neither. And that's what we talk about in terms of the contradictions. We have a question from our brother James Bookman. What is your thoughts on investing in the stock market during this time?
Man, I would never. And well, let me retrace that. So you've heard of the saying, in Vegas, the house always wins.
Yes.
And the stock market is just the lottery, you know what I'm saying? And it's fixed. However, there are certain stocks you could invest in that, and I would say look into the tech industry, and also in the hospital administration agency. But I wouldn't put my shirt in there, because you got to look at the history of the stock market and how it was created. The stock market was created, or it boomed, because they got rid of pensions. Pensions are what our grandparents used to have, where you would work for a company for some odd years, and then when you retire, they pay you every month until you died. Well, that was not a profitable thing for corporations, because the more people that stayed there, the more free money they had to give out, and so that cut into their profit. So they created the stock, or they created the 401k. The 401k is what then put the onus on you to create your own savings, your retirement savings. And it would tell you to put it into the stock market. Well, the stock market boomed from, I think it boomed and reached a high as far as returns for the investor around 1980. Nowadays, if you were to invest in the stock market for a period of 40 years, you're going to get a roughly average return of about 1.8% on your investment.
Wow.
So that's not even, or that's on equal par of what you would get from a savings account with a $10,000 or more balance. So what I'm saying is, if you're putting away money for 40 years or 30 years or what have you, and you're only going to get a less than 2% return, you can't retire on that, especially when you realize that inflation factors in and the cost of living will be much higher 20 years from now. So we are not aware of where to put these monies, and they tell us to put them here because when you put them there, who does that make rich? The international bankers. So the stock market is the last place I would put my money for investment, especially if you want it to grow for you. There are other spaces where you can put it. And if you do the diligence, or I'll throw my name in the hat, I'll be happy to teach you. I have a course that teaches financial literacy in this respect of where to put your investments to create, so you can retire off of those savings and investments. I'll be happy to show you.
All right, where can crypto future, the news? Sometimes they misinform us. Sometimes crypto is up. Sometimes it's down. What's your thoughts on crypto, and how does it fit in the future?
Yeah, man, I'm all for it. Right now, we all know about Bitcoin, but there's thousands, tens of thousands of other coins. But I rock with the OGs like your Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. Right. So we are entering the second year of a 3-year run. So, well, I'm sorry, a 4-year run. So what happens is when we look at Bitcoin, for instance, which started in, I believe it was 2011. There's trends, there's history, and you got to do the history. So Bitcoin has a habit of having 3 good years, really good years, and then 1 bad year. They call that a crypto winter. So 2022 was our crypto winter. Last January 2023, we saw crypto drop, mainly Bitcoin, which is the father of them all, grandfather of them all. We saw it go from, it went up 50%. Now, as I speak right now, Bitcoin is at $62,000 a coin, a unit, right? Last week it was at 50,000. So what we're seeing is a push, and this push is supposed to continue going for another year until 2026. Now, Bitcoin is slated to be over $100,000 a coin by 2030. Wow. Now, the reason why I'm for crypto is because crypto offers a level of anonymity. It's a global coin that you can turn into any other dollar. Any other what do they call it again? Any other kind of a yen, a pound, right, a colonis.
Dollar, for lack of better words, yeah,
dollar. So you can change it to whatever. But the beautiful thing about the crypto was that it appreciates in value. So if you were to have one coin and Bitcoin was at $10,000, let's just say that was like, well, that was even like in 2018, it went down to like, I think $15,000. I'm sorry, 2020. If you had one coin that's worth $15,000 and you still had that same coin today, it's now worth $62,000. Wow. Because it appreciates and also lowers in value with the move of the market. So what am I saying? Crypto grows in value much higher in percentage. We're talking about 3 to 4 figure percentage increases, not the 1.8% that you get from the stock market in your 401k or your savings account, 1.8%, less than 2%. We're talking about 1,000+% in your investment in a shorter period of time. And from that, you can convert that, pull it out, and use it to live off of, to whatever. And it's global. There's anonymity. There's no KYC, knowing your customer. They got all your information. And although the government is trying to change that with the Fed Now bill that passed last July,
trying to regulate crypto now.
Yeah, but that's an American thing. It's not as highly scrutinized around the globe. In fact, there's some places like El Salvador where their currency is Bitcoin. Their official currency is Bitcoin. Wow. So you can buy everything with Bitcoin. But here's the thing. I don't want to get crypto to buy things, because it's like a piece of art. You let it grow and it appreciates in value. Now you can loan against it, meaning I can pull out and still pay back the loan and get that value, and it still grows as long as I pay the loan back. but you don't want to cash out on an appreciating value or a commodity.
Because
So
it
that's
pretty
one
much
of the
becomes an asset.
or an asset. On my bad. Yeah.
Right. Because now, and for those who don't know, assets is something that appreciates. I think if they saw a baby boy, difference between guns and butter, you
Right.
know,
Right.
things that appreciate.
And just like your, land, if you
Yeah.
buy a house and it's worth this amount when you bought it, and then 5 years from now it should go up if you take care of it, or if the neighborhood is being taken care of, it grows in value. So therefore, you can sell it if you wanted to and make a profit in your initial investment. Same thing here with crypto. The whole thing is, I would choose not to cash out because here's an example. There was a guy in what year was this? 2000, I think it was 2013 or 12. This guy decided to test out Bitcoin when it was about 83 cents a coin. 83 cents. He bought 10,000. He spent 10,000 Bitcoin to buy 2 large Papa John pizzas. All right. So he paid more than what it was valued, but at the same time, it was crypto. So he was just thankful that someone would accept it. So Papa John's accepted 10,000 Bitcoin at 83 cents, right? He gets the pizza, he eats it, shits it out, he's done, right? But if Papa John still has those 10,000 Bitcoin, multiply that by the 62 grand a day, that's $620,000. That pizza, those 2 large pizzas were worth $620,000. So it pays to hold on to it. And if you do want to pull out, take it as a loan. And more importantly, what we've noticed this past week is, because people hear about Coinbase, that's the main one, is that it's shut down because so many people were buying it, because we have the habit of buying when things are high. You should buy when it's low. So because everybody saw how it was jumping up, everybody's trying to buy Bitcoin, so it crashed. The point is that you don't want to buy crypto. You want to get paid in crypto. That's the point. That's the discussion where you need to be at. How can I create something that pays me in crypto? So therefore, that's passive income that also appreciates in crazy percentages. But that's the conversation that I'm really trying to put our people on, to understand that piece, because then you really can fire your boss and be your own boss and own your time. And that boss doesn't have to be, you have to have a business. My job is I learn how I live off my finances. That's my job. I don't have to go and work and put in hours. I just need to make sure that my numbers are right, and that's it. Couple hours a day, if that, and then I'm done.
Wow, dope. Gutta, any questions you have for our brother?
No, that's like I said. I'm just soaking it up. I'm taking all that
in. So, brother and baby, we ain't gonna hold you up too much long. I know I said I only need you for about an hour, but it's been a little over an hour. But
it's my pleasure, bro. It's so my pleasure.
I'm glad that we end this on a high note, not the doom and gloom, and with a vision for the future. A lot of times we have these conversations about our position, our plight as Black people / African people in the world. A lot of times we go back to history of the doom and gloom, and we always looked as victims. But I think it's always imperative that we have a conversation about victory. I'd rather be victorious than victimized. And we have to change the paradigm of our people consciousness. And this little information you gave us about crypto makes so much sense, because everybody's having this conversation around us and not with us. We're still talking about policies. We're still talking about letting migrants in and jobs and things like that we've seen haven't benefited us yet. Right? Where can the people find you? Because I know you got so much other stuff going on. We didn't talk about self-sustaining communities outside of the U.S. and all of that. But again, I think I told you before, my door is always open to you. You're always welcome to come back. Anything you got going on, anything you want to share, any new developments and updates, programs you got, this is your home too, brother. Just feel free to share. Just hit me and Gutta up like, yo, I want to come back to the show because I want to talk about this. I think this is important. What we're doing, me and Gutta, this is an idea we came up with some times ago with our brother Doggy Diamond. Salute to him, because there's a particular conversation that our folks on a grassroots level need. And a lot of people, as you spoke to earlier about leadership, it's solely about grandizing their ego. It's not a us. It's a me. Come to my event, buy my DVD. I don't rock with him, so you don't rock with him. And it keeps our community divided. Meanwhile, we see all the ops unifying and circling around us. So, my brother, like to say thank you. What you said, Gutter brother?
I said, which is weird. If you're supposed to be pro-black, how you anti another nigga?
Yeah. It's just crazy. So again, our brother in Boule, tell the folks where they can find you at.
Yeah, man. You can
find your and how they could buy your book. Shout out to our brother Kev Alston.
Yeah, man. You can find me on social media at Mboebe Ishangi. I don't know if I should put well, can they see the chat if I put it? No, they can't see the chat. You can reach me at Cryptowoke movement.com. That's CRYPTO woke and WOKE movement.com, cryptowokemovement.com. Also the Ghetto Times at DAGHETTOTYMZ.com.
All right, brothers. So again, we thank you for joining us. We want to thank the audience for joining us. This is the relaunch of the OG Wisdom podcast. We're going to have other guests with valuable information at our